It is what it is. I'll go without sound. Anyways, I find this really fucking hilarious because it's really out of touch, and I feel like the Post makes basically the same article like every week. I see it, I swear, so often, but I think it brings up a really good point of things that people are saying right now, especially because of like hashtag defund the police, or what they're going to be saying a lot more as even time goes on, is that, you know, Dems or whoever is trying to destroy our cities and whatnot like that, because they're taking away all of our protection and a lot of fear-mongering, basically. And we need to be like wary of that. And there's a couple different things here. Let me like preempt it with something else real quick. So here's a Times article, and let's like point it out. Like, violent crimes have gotten a lot worse over the summer and then this year, just in general. There is a reason though, and first off, normally, as this mentions, crime just always jumps in the summer, right? Violence has rattled New York City and has intensified. The debate over policing continued at an alarming rate. In August, shootings more than doubled over the same period last year, and murders rose by nearly 50%, the police said. The data released Wednesday reflected a trend many cities across the country are experiencing in a year already marked by pandemic and civil unrest, and a new surge in shootings, murders, and other crimes has public officials grasping for explanations and scrambling to respond. Okay, so like, I was also being stupid with the audio. I don't know why. I just realized. I was overthinking it. Anyways, a lot more gun violence, a lot of more things like burglaries, I believe even some rapes. Actually, I believe that actually stayed down. Excuse me. I think that stayed down because less people were on the street throughout the year, right? But but this is not just New York, which was a big place to talk about it, because, you know, it's New York City, it's the largest city in the country, and it's more or less, you know, a big liberal city, so they like to point to it. Data released on Wednesday reflected a trend many cities across the country are experiencing a year already marked by a pandemic and civil unrest. The surge in shootings, murders, and other crimes has public officials grasping for explanations and scrambling to respond. The uptick has been seized upon President Trump, who has tried to shift the public's attention away from his response to the pandemic, which a lot of this is going to be. It's literally just distraction, to what he depicts as out-of-control crime in New York City and other urban areas. He has tried to blame the rise in violence on local Democratic leaders. So, I'm trying to remember, actually, a hotkey that I put on here. Ooh, not that one. But, oh, that's right. That's fun. But yeah, so the uptick's been seized by President Trump, who's tried to shift public attention away from his response to the pandemic. What he depicts is out-of-control crime in New York and other urban areas, tried to blame rise violent crime, but this year has been extreme in New York. It has. Since May, the city has recorded 791 shootings, more than 140% of an increase over the same period in 2019. The 180 murders seen between May and August is a more than 51% increase compared to 2019. That's a lot, right? However, like, a really important thing to take from this, though, and there's a lot of like sad anecdotal stories, and it is sad, but, and we can get back to the perfect storm part, suggests that the pandemic was part to blame. The pandemic is part to blame, but it's so much more like a long-standing issue. And it's kind of funny that, no, it's not even funny. Like, it's obvious why they're not addressing the real issues. You might have heard a lot, like during the beginning, there's a lot of issues that were already a problem have just been made worse. And that's true. Like, that's God honest truth. And of course the pandemic's gonna make it worse. Things that were already bad, and this is the case. These things were already bad. So now crime itself was actually lower, but right here, John Plath, a law professor at Fordham University, which is in New York if you don't know, who has been scrutinizing crime stats, said that crime in the city had reached historical low levels, making the current rise seem large in percentage terms. The percent change numbers look shocking because we're doing so well, not necessarily because we're doing so poorly. Said that this year's protests and the pandemic's economic, social, and emotional disruption could be heavily influencing the spike in crime, but much remains unclear. How much of that is COVID? How much of that is social unrest? How much of that is policing response to that? He said, at this point, it's far, far too early to really be able to say. All those things are involved in, they're, intersectional. People love to make fun of that word, but it is. It's multiple things affecting one another, which includes the fact that we're having a huge housing crisis right now, where a lot of people are fearing the fact that they're going to be evicted because they can't pay rent, and landlords are not really doing forgiveness. There was the moratorium, and then that was about it. So now what? Well, there's that, which means more likelihood of people on the streets, more homeless people on the streets, more people in need of money, food, which means people will commit crimes. And that's not good, no, but like, the underlying problem isn't just like people bad, like bad city, you can blame Democratic leadership. That's valid. Actually, de Blasio, Cuomo, they did a lot of shit this year that really got, really fucked us. Like, Cuomo reduced Medicaid in New York. De Blasio was right there when watching cops mow down protesters in the street with their cars. So what it comes down to is like a lot of large systemic issues that have been issues for a very long time. If people were taken care of, if we had locked down for a month and had everyone paid. But here's the other issue. New York, with all their mess ups and whatever, ran out of money, just like most states this year, and requested the government, the federal government, which they pay a lot of money to, New York does, for aid. And it never came. A big part of why it never came was Trump said that he needed praise and like an apology from Cuomo and praise that he did a good job. He needed validation, and so it never came. Do you not see the issue with that? And that's the problem. That's one of the main problems. So now we come to this, which there was already a couple articles like this one was from a guy who owned a comedy club, and Jerry Seinfeld famously wrote back on that, which this article references as well. But this article from the Post is really deceptive in certain parts, very. And then the other part is the very privileged take of this dude. So let's look, right? I used to love New York City, but feckless leaders have forced me to leave. Oh, sorry. So, Jason Curtis Anderson. I am curious to read more about this. By the way, this article came out yesterday. Apparently he had I'm just curious. Apparently he had a Medium article. But that's whatever. Writes that leaders like Mayor de Blasio have made him lose hope for New York City. After seeing his beloved city disintegrate amid COVID-19 and rising crime, Jason Curtis Anderson, 39. By the way, does this guy look like Jeff Winger? There's from Community, there's a lot more photos that he just really looks like a douche. But anyways, poured out his heart in a Medium post. Here it is. A lot of this is probably the same stuff that I read in this. Yeah, okay. So, here's an expanded version of that essay, widely circulated on local Facebook groups. Had you met me a little more than a year ago, you would have met a man having the time of his life. Back then, I was the digital marketing director for SUNY schools. SUNY are public colleges here in New York City, where I mostly produced videos and worked on presentations. The 2019 version of me usually woke up 10 minutes before, that was before the update, version of me usually woke up 10 minutes before my alarm clock went off, excited to start my day, and often went to sleep feeling a sense of accomplishment. I had finally arranged all the little details of my NYC life in such a way that where I did not want to change a thing. And I'm pretty sure this guy was probably not originally from New York City. I'm not either. I'm a transplant. But in 2020, having front row seats to watch the city that never sleeps get brought to its knees is an experience I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Many people claim things weren't that bad here. I do as well. And they're entitled to write their own opinion pieces. Although I can't imagine an article about how great life in New York City was this year being very interesting or very honest. Even Jerry Seinfeld wrote his defense of New York from the safety of his compound in the Hamptons, not the Upper West Side. We'll just have to agree to disagree. Okay, disagree. And it gets to this, but I do not. He lives in a nice neighborhood. We'll get to that. I was born in Sleepy Hollow, which is up a little bit upstate. Grew up in Westchester, but have lived in New York City all of my adulthood, spending the last decade just a few blocks from Chelsea. So, he's a transplant, but he is from New York. Blocks from Chelsea Market, which is where he lives, and that is brought up. If you are unaware, Chelsea is ridiculously expensive. It is actually the most expensive place to live in Manhattan, which is the most expensive borough to live in the city, in the entirety of the city. So, must have been really hard for him. As a person who was in the West Village on the morning of 9/11, I'm no stranger to tragedy. I had a car back then, and I tried to escape Manhattan that day via the West Side Highway. The only cars heading toward downtown that day were police cars, military and firemen from other states and cities. Brave heroes drove full speed, and the city was under attack. This feels different, though. Okay. So, COVID settled into his new home in New York City. My local coffee shop closed. My gym shuttered. I lost my job at SUNY. Hey, that sucks, actually. And everything I loved was temporarily put on pause. A term that 9 months later now feels like a cruel joke. None of us knew what we were facing back in March, or how long it would last. The streets became quiet, the city became still, all the sounds, the familiar faces, the buses, busy restaurants, the daily rituals, the very pace of our existence slowed to a full stop. The silence was deafening. Hey, this is dramatic, but it was. I think we all can agree to that. It still does. It sucks. I really hate the fact that, I can't do the things that I was doing when I got here. I was here 6 months before this happened. Those 6 months felt like a lifetime. And I can't wait to return back to them because it was such a different life. Sorry, my dog's whining real quick. Ollie. What? Hold on, actually. I think he might need to eat. Give me one moment. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Had to go feed the dog. Making sure he was alive, So, yeah, no, I miss New York, like how it was. It feels sad and not right, and I think we can all attest to that. I feel like that's a really normal feeling right now, and it really sucks. And yeah, no, I mean, it is, and that's a normal response, and I think that's fair. I can give him that, but that only, my kindness for that only goes so far when what he blames and how he goes on this. I get that it's hard, but this idea of I need to move out of this city is so crime ridden and dangerous. And I mean, I know that there's probably some crazy shit going on, and it's definitely affected some people. Absolutely. I don't live in Chelsea though. I can tell you that. And all the complaining about homelessness and all this stuff is always coming from the Upper West Side, which is nice. And Chelsea was a big one when this first started. They were freaking out that there was homeless people. Mind you, they didn't seem to care that much when there was already homeless people. Normally, if you'd go walk by the subway or have to literally sometimes walk over people to, and it's sad. It's really sad, and that's a systemic problem, and it needs to be fixed. But that said, the other side of it is any large populous city, popular one for that matter, will have a homeless problem if there's not real social change countrywide that a lot of people advocate for. Better treatment of the homeless, we treat homeless people like they're deserving of death. It's ridiculous, and people freak out if you treat them decently or give them a place to be. It's not right. This is honestly what he is about to go down and complain about in a minute here is capitalism. When a place is popular, realty investors and speculators want to build new places to have more businesses come in and get made, and then they drive people out of their homes or make it very hard now that they're much poorer, trying to live in the same neighborhood with the same people, like family that they care about and their community. And this pushes people out, makes crime go up when things like when they are fighting for scraps and for their, like, they're now paying more and they can't get the appropriate mental health care that they might need, or, you know, help with addiction, or maybe they turned to alcohol or drugs because of how hard these things were. This is part of how the system works. It only got worse because then no one had a job. This was already a problem everywhere. And it was definitely already a problem in New York. The only difference is that we actually started giving some people shelter. That made people in the Upper West Side very upset. Made people in Chelsea very upset. Made people, now that they were seeing homeless people more, because guess what? More people were homeless. More people were in danger of, like, severe poverty. Like, these people that are complaining about this have lived very nice, comfy, pristine lives away from everything. The homeless and mentally ill flourished in my Chelsea neighborhood overnight. Many residents fled our beloved city to safer suburbs and second homes. Man, so hard. I'm glad they had another place to go to. After a night in the West Village where I saw men looting cars and a gunpoint robbery happen by the West 4th train station, I no longer felt comfortable here. I decided that I couldn't abide by the lawlessness and my first pandemic at the same time. So I spent the first wave of my pandemic upstate in a guest room at my family's house. Pathetic. Here, at least, I didn't have to worry about the crime. After spending 3 months in quarantine upstate, I decided it was time to start putting my NYC life back together. The idea of suffering through this time with my closest friends felt like a step in the right direction. Even if we didn't have our bars and restaurants for an undetermined amount of time, at least we'd have each other. I imagined my summer would be filled with long walks, bike rides on the West Side Highway, and small gatherings on rooftops. I imagined we'd get over COVID and that the energy of the city would come back slowly over the next 6 months. I was optimistic. I love my city and I love my life here with all my heart. I hopefully assumed most New Yorkers had the same feelings I did, and then the riots happened. The dark tone of daily life now seems permanent. Yeah. 4 months after the riots, stores in my area were still being burglarized. And the helicopters were so close they would shake my top floor apartment at night. In peak summer, there were always 2 or 3 homeless people on both sides of every street in my area. Hey, baby. Tell me if this guy looks like Jeff Winger.
What?
Tell me if this guy looks like Jeff Winger.
Like who?
Jeff Winger from Community.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Douchey, right? Okay, valid. Every aspect of my life became about avoiding them and staying far enough away from anyone who might attack me. Someone broke into my building one night but fled when they accidentally set off the alarm on the roof. The whole summer felt like living in a war zone. Dating used to be a pleasure for me. During my summer in Chelsea, there were so many stabbings and robberies within 1 block of my apartment. I no longer felt comfortable making plans that involved meeting anywhere. I'd walk to get coffee in the morning and get harassed and threatened by homeless people every day. 6 months after NYC's first wave of riots. actually had good focus. Oh. Let me check this real quick. So. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was just trying to fix something. That does work. There we go. Anyways. Yeah, riots. So, I'm not mentioning the fact that majority of protests were peaceful. A lot of violence was started by police, which we have a lot of statistical data and research on. But riots didn't feel safe, which, mind you, I was part of a couple of the BLM protests when we were here, and I have photos of that on my Instagram and video. And some of that was just literally like getting boxed in by cops. And I saw people arrested for no reason. Give me 1 second. Sorry. Sorry. Had to, as you see right there, for a little bit. Put in a new battery on my camera. So, I know it's a little distracting. It'll go away in a little second. So, let me, in the meantime, okay, for now. All right. So, unfortunately, the worst parts of 2020 now all seem to be new normal. Homeless people wandering the streets, businesses closed, rampant crime, protests, riots, random acts of violence, dangerous subways. The day I moved out of my Chelsea apartment, I was packing the last of my belongings when a homeless man cut someone's throat in a parking garage less than 1 block away. This, I mean, there's no link to this. It could just well be an anecdote. I don't know. I'm sure there's been a lot of terrible things happening. But that's literally not everyone's experience. I've not had an issue. Has my girlfriend had some issues? I mean, she's been yelled at, I think, by like some, or like kind of mentioned by some kind of crazy guy or some guy that's not mentally all where he needs to be in the subway. But to be fair, like that's like normal New York. I've not seen any issues. Might just be because I'm localized to my area a lot more. But my area is not a predominantly white neighborhood. I've not seen a ton of crime like coming through here. Like it's not been that much of an issue. It's not hindered me. Maybe it's worse in the richer neighborhoods. Who knows? And it's more anecdotes. Really sad things like a 1-year-old baby being shot in a stroller is not normal. Our safest neighborhoods now becoming our most dangerous for the first time in 30 years is not normal. Yeah, I mean, these things are not normal. We aren't living in normal times. But I can tell you it's not the police, because a big part of the police that happened this year, what we found out is a lot of them had a ton of complaints filed against them, some being violent, like obviously. Like half of the issues already were coming from the police. And obviously a lot of what they're going to bring up, and they do bring up, is because now they're being defunded or not defunded, excuse me, that hasn't happened. But now that they've like stopped the one that was like looking for illegal weapons, a unit that like that, or they're saying that we're now just so spread thin and so many people are also retiring, and it's basically it's all BLM's fault. It's all feckless leaders that haven't cut down on crime. It's the same bullshit, fashy type of stuff that Trump's been peddling. So it offends me when people tell me to toughen up, and NYC has always had crime. Well, like we said, we're actually been doing really well for a long time. This is bad, but overall, very well. We should not be downplaying the drastic changes in public safety we're all experiencing. People getting, okay, yeah, I already read the part. As a person desperate for answers, I took to Twitter to see what other residents were saying about life in New York City. What I found was New Yorkers of all backgrounds desperately crying for help regarding quality of life issues. Hey, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of issues that are not being addressed. We need more money. Each state does, but we definitely do here. Like our MTA, our subway system might fail, and it's not a light thing. Like if it fails, like that'll affect the entire country, because it's how a lot of people get to their jobs, and New York is one of the biggest contributors to the economy. So it will be bad if we don't do anything about it. And we do need more help. A lot more. And there has been a lot of oversights, stupid ones, from people like Cuomo and Bill de Blasio. They are not off the hook, and they shouldn't be. However, there's a lot of trying to peddle this as a tough on crime issue and BLM and all of this junk. And it's a lot of anxiety directed at the wrong places. What I found was New Yorkers of all backgrounds desperately crying for help regarding quality of life issues. It seems that many of us agree the streets are no longer safe and that the homeless hotel deals, these have been a point of controversy. You know, they probably should be able to do more than just throw them in hotels. Yes. But people off the streets is a plus, and I'm okay with it. I don't care. What were once safe neighborhoods, random acts of violence happen daily. Commuters are pushed in front of subways regularly. And no matter how loud we all are about our new societal problems, our elected leaders just don't seem to hear us. What's interesting about this group of New Yorkers is that they're not inner trolls, but a diverse group ranging from young adults to senior citizens. All of this is nice and anecdotal, and he doesn't know these people, so there's that. But whatever. From property owners to writers, some of us who never seem to know the inner working of politics like it's their job. Dangerous drug addicts are left free to roam subway stations. That is not what they put this up for. I really hate this as someone that's a photographer and filmmaker. This is just really dishonest, like putting this picture with this type of caption. Yeah. I was pulled from Getty Images. They're not gonna put this up for addicts left roaming the subway stations. That's not why. They do construction and work on subway stations all the time, and they close them off like this. For the last 6 months, I've watched this group of concerned citizens beg our mayor and the city council for help on Twitter every day. People began forming groups based upon common sense themes, like Fitty residents or safer streets in New York. Obviously, everything I'm going to look from here. These guys might be decent people. I don't know. But like anything I'm going to see from here is going to be not good. Their whole point is to show things that have not been good. Yep, okay, here we go. Abolish the police, no statement on public safety. Safety, have you no mercy? A churchgoer's constituents attacked, first food pantry deliver worker, now a church? Yeah. Again, there's a lot of not an understanding of what like abolish the police even means by a lot of these people. So there's that. So, oh, hey, Starling. Thank you. How was your Valorant games? Let me check something. I'm not getting stream right now, or chat, just in case you are here. Thank you for coming through. But yeah, just the other day I asked City Council member Stephen Levin what he thought about naked homeless people wandering our streets, including some photos of homeless people having sex in public, to which he responded, as far as I can see, these people aren't doing anything to be undeserving of my kindness or yours. How do they know they're homeless? Again, there's just a lot of, to be fair, New York in general, like when it's normal, is insane. just to give you an idea here. What's up, people? Thank you, Starling, for coming through. Seriously, that's really cool. There. Oh, that's why. But yeah, I'm basically going over an article about apparently why New York is the worst city ever, apparently, by the New York Post. I go over politics as well as play video games. And I will be playing video games later. But this article just really irked me. Where is it? Like, they're talking about people doing like lewd acts in public, which I get. Like this article is really dramatic from like a really privileged guy that lived in like the richest neighborhood of New York, saying why he just can't live in New York anymore. It's just too hard for him. And like they point to like lewd acts or things that are happening in New York, but like New York, like insane shit like happens literally every day. And I think there's a good example of that.
Man's in the Mario Kart. That man's in the Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Dear Lord. Actually, the Joker's going to come back up in a second. Yeah, I mean, and this is fairly New York, right? I don't know if anyone lives here. That's in this chat. This is pretty much New York. There's weird shit that literally happens every day. And this was before COVID. I guess some of this is not, but before COVID it was too. There's this whole playlist all about that, and I do actually want to go through and watch those later, but So yeah, the ongoing dialogue between the nickname the Sane Center and Groundhog Day, our politicians avoid answering quality of life questions at all costs. Once in a while, they throw us a non-answer that reads along the lines of more policing can't be the answer to everything, which it can't. So that's what I was saying earlier. He brings up protests and riots and things like that, but there are more homeless issues and more murders, what I did bring up, but it is actually way better than it sounds because overall we've been doing really well. But yeah, that's what happens when people aren't being taken care of. People are being ejected out of neighborhoods when more people are doing speculation and building more apartments, kicking people out of their neighborhoods, or that they've now become really poor and can't deal with their mental health issues. It's socioeconomic. Like, it's not just police. I mean, sure, nobody's saying get rid of the police entirely, right? So, but he's talking about this as that no one's doing anything, which I'll admit, there's a lot that is not being done, but he's blaming the wrong things. While our politicians claim to care about black and brown neighbors the most, these very same neighbors have actually suffered the worst uptick in violent crime. There's a lot of socioeconomic stuff about that too. The gang shootings in last year, so exactly are we helping them? But if life somehow managed to get back to normal within a reasonable amount of years, it's not going to be because of bail reform. Actually, I would disagree with that. The idea that bail, eliminating bail is causing more crime is an insane notion. We just put more people in hold on real quick. The idea that letting people not have to pay for their bail, you're not legally allowed to just be locked up and before your trial. The whole point of bail was the idea that it's supposed to be a reasonable bail in the first place. What we have right now, like those people that are getting bail are not guilty. They aren't, not in a court of law, right? So if life somehow managed to get back to normal, bail won't do it, yada, yada. Progress on these issues is only going to come when our leaders actually prioritize the city's most important problems. A new park does the city no good if it's not safe to take the train there or walk home at night. I understand that being a public servant is often a thankless job. I just worry that our current elected leaders are not actually the right people for the job, as they've already proven by ignoring these problems for an entire year. And again, a lot of that comes down to resources. What do we have for resources? We ran out of money. We're waiting for more. Yeah, coronavirus in New York, crime, looting, New York City, shootings. This is just junk. It's meant to get people worried. This guy, who knows? He might be for real. He might not be. If not, though, it seems very reactionary and seems to be not even taking in mind the real actual issues, misunderstanding how bail works and how putting homeless shelters, making hotels homeless shelters is a good thing. I don't know, it really irks me. Otherwise,